Good evening, folks, and welcome to the Horror Corner. Oh, what time will you return, sir? Couple hours. Good. I'll have your bed prepared when you return. Like father, like son, Elise. Of course, sir. Good evening, folks, and welcome to the Horror Corner. I'm your host, Sean Patrick Hirsch, and this week we're doing another movie review. This is The Horror of Frankenstein. From Hammer Films, directed by Jimmy Sangster, released in 1970. And starring Ralph Bates in the role of Victor Frankenstein, Veronica Carlson in the role of Elizabeth Heiss, and Kate O'Mara in the role of Elise, as well as David Prowls as the monster this time around. Yes, David Prowls, of course, known for portraying the legendary Darth Vader in the original Star Wars trilogy. Yes. Hammer Films, released in 1970, directed by Jimmy Sangster. Now, this was a film that was kind of like a reboot to the Hammer Frankenstein series. In a way, it's kind of a remake of The Curse of Frankenstein, the original Hammer Frankenstein film. And which is obviously based on the original story from Mary Shelley, which had been adapted many, many times throughout film history, of course. And as you know, there were several Hammer Frankenstein films before this, all starring Peter Cushing as Victor Frankenstein. Now, they decided to do something a little bit different this time. They wanted to use a younger actor, and, they wanted Ralph Bates to be like the next face of Hammer Films, They wanted a young guy to, be the star of Hammer, because, Christopher Lee and Peter Cushing were getting older, they wanted a fresh young face. And, he did do a couple films after this, but he never quite made it to be the big face of Hammer Films, unfortunately, so they ended up going back to Peter Cushing and continuing the Frankenstein series with, Frankenstein and the Monster from Hell and stuff like that. It didn't quite work out for them in the long run. And a lot of people didn't care for this entry. It didn't fare as well with the critics and with the fans. So it just kind of became a one-shot. And people didn't care for the fact that there was more humor in this one, than some of the previous entries, which were pretty straight-up horror. And I still consider this to be very much a horror film. There is a little bit more humor than some of the other ones, but I would hardly say it's a black comedy or anything like that. I still think it's a straight-up horror movie with a little bit of humor. And most of that comes at the hands of Victor Frankenstein, played by Ralph Bates in the film. He does have kind of a charisma and a charm, and he has some one-liners throughout the movie that are kind of funny, but it's still very much a horror film, in my opinion. You have the lovely Veronica Carlson and Kate O'Mara, two legends of Hammer horror. We saw Kate O'Mara in The Vampire Lovers. Veronica Carlson, of course, we saw her in Dracula Has Risen from the Grave, films like that. And she was in a couple entries in the Frankenstein films as well. I believe Frankenstein Must Be Destroyed, she was in that one. And then she's also in one of the later ones, I think it's Frankenstein and the Monster from Hell. Also starring David Prowls as the monster. So David Prowls played the monster twice in the Hammer Frankenstein series. Now this one here didn't have quite the budget as some of the other ones too. They kind of recycled the sets from Taste the Blood of Dracula and The Vampire Lovers. So they did kind of crunch the budget a little bit, but you can't tell on screen because it still looks like a classic horror film in every way with the great gothic set designs. Maybe some of the blood and gore could have been, they could have spent a little bit more money on that aspect of the film, but it's still classic Hammer horror in every way. You get the beautiful costume designs. I mean, every time you see Veronica Carlson on film, she's wearing this gorgeous dress. She's all done up, you know, beautiful costumes and gowns and you know, all the things we know Hammer as being are present in this film for sure. And you got a great gothic score, and great direction by Jimmy Sangster. Jimmy Sangster is often a producer on a lot of these films. I haven't seen him direct all that many, but you know, I think he does a great job directing on this film. And it feels a lot like The Curse of Frankenstein. There's a lot of the same beats, you know. It's basically a remake in a lot of ways. But this time around there are a few differences. Victor Frankenstein this time around is very much straight up evil. You know, he does not care for anybody but himself and his experiments. There's no care in the world. He's cold-blooded. Where, you know, he seemed very much like a human being in the other films with Peter Cushing. He may have had some devious nature to him beneath the surface, but here he's just straight out evil. He makes no apologies, you know, and he's very nonchalant about it, you know. And I can see where maybe some of the comedy would come from that aspect, as he's just doesn't care, you know, he's ruthless, you know. He will kill anyone, he will do anything in the name of science and in the name of his research and his work. He will step on anybody along the way, he doesn't care, you know. He even kills his own father in the film. He straight up kills him. So when Victor's father won't give him the money to go to the university that he wants to study medicine, he sabotages his father's gun when he goes out to hunt and, you know, shoot the ducks. And he goes to shoot one of the ducks and his gun goes off and kills him. So, oh man. So yeah, cold blood as hell. And so Victor is left the entire estate, his father's estate, his father's castle and home, including the young maid played by Kate O'Mara, the housekeeper. He inherits her, and she's this young, beautiful woman. You know, he takes full advantage of that. You know, he takes her to bed just like she used to sleep with the father. You know, he's like father, like son. You know. But again, there's no love there, there's no connection, it's just, he's just pleasing himself, you know, trying to get at peace, basically. There's no love, there's no connection. And the same thing goes with Veronica Carlson as Elizabeth, you know. And Elizabeth really cares for him, you know. So he first meets Elizabeth when he's going to school at the university in the science class. And, you know, she kind of falls for him along the way, you know. And he ends up running into Victor Frankenstein later on because his father's like a big scientist. And Victor Frankenstein meets with him only because he wants his brain to use for the creation of his monster. And that's exactly the only purpose that he has. But Elizabeth has another purpose. She wants to be with Victor Frankenstein. It does turn out that Kate O'Mara's character, Elise, she tries to blackmail Victor And, you know, she finds out what he's doing with his experiments, and she kind of threatens to expose him, you know, because he sees that Elizabeth wants to get with Victor and move in and, you know, be his wife or whatever, and she feels like she's not going to have any more use for Victor, you know. And so she kind of tries to blackmail him to give her some money so she can at least live comfortably, you know. And he doesn't take too kindly to that. You're not gonna sell Victor Frankenstein down the river. So once the monster is created, which has a great makeup job, by the way, I think it looks more like the classic Frankenstein's monster than any of the other Frankenstein films in Hammer. He always seems to have a different kind of look, the monster, throughout the Frankenstein series. And this one, he's kind of the classic look, you know, closer to the classic, like, Universal Monsters version of Frankenstein. But this monster is brutal as hell, you know. The difference between this monster and any of the others is there's no sympathetic side to him. He's just straight up brute, you know. He's a big, giant monster who's just vicious and brutal. The only thing he wants to do is kill. And there's one scene where he just grabs an axe and hacks someone to death, you know. It's like a slasher movie at one point, you know. Whoever he sees, whoever gets in his way, he kills. And he has no interest in trying to learn anything, to try and learn about life. The only interest he has is killing. So he's like this big killing machine, you know. That's the monster that Ralph Bates has created this time. And he doesn't care. Victor does not care. He does not want to try and, like, stop the monster and save people and save humanity, you know. The only thing Victor cares about is his own experiments and his own self-worth. And yeah, as I was saying, as you know, Kate O'Mara's character Elise tries to, you know, blackmail him. So he tells her, he's like, you know, maybe you want to see what I've been studying, you know, where the money's coming from, what it's going into, my research. And he takes her upstairs into the laboratory, and she sees the monster there chained up, and then he just locks her in the room, and the monster kills her, you know. So, like I say, you're not going to blackmail Victor Frankenstein. He's much too smart for that. You're not going to outsmart Frankenstein. So yeah, I think Veronica Carlson is fantastic in this film as Elizabeth. She's just absolutely gorgeous. And so is Kate O'Mara as well. She does a great job being like a vixen type character, you know. Once she kind of turns on Victor, she kind of, you know, has that little devious nature to her, and she does a great job. Another truly gorgeous woman. So you got two of the great Hammer horror ladies in this film. And Ralph Bates does a fantastic job, I think, you know, as the young Victor Frankenstein. I think he's great, you know. I feel like they probably could have continued the series with him, but unfortunately it didn't work out. So they brought Peter Cushing back. Not to say anything bad about Peter Cushing. Peter Cushing is the greatest, you know. He's absolutely amazing in the role of Victor Frankenstein. But, you know, you have to admit he was getting pretty old by that time. So I can understand why they wanted to breathe new life into the series and with a new young blood, you know. It just didn't work out. It didn't fare as well with the critics, and it wasn't a big financial success, so they, you know, they scrapped the idea, and this just became a one-shot in the series, you know, and then they just, you know, decided to continue it with Peter Cushing returning, you know, and that did fare well with The Monster from Hell. I think was pretty successful. So there you have it. I do recommend Horror of Frankenstein for you Hammer fans, you know. Give it a chance, give it a shot. I think you'll enjoy it, you know. It has some good humor, it has some great horror, it's got some great blood and gore, you know. It's pretty damn dark in a lot of ways. You know, I don't understand why people consider it like a parody, because this one's pretty damn dark, you know. But I highly recommend Horror of Frankenstein from 1970, directed by Jimmy Sangster, starring Ralph Bates, Veronica Carlson, Kate O'Mara, and David Prowls as the monster. Thank you for joining me, Sean Patrick Urshan, in the Horror Corner. Tune in and stay scared. Folks, don't forget to grab your Sean Patrick Urshan gear and represent the Horror Corner. Also, check out these awesome mugs we have, perfect for your coffee. And definitely check out the Horror Hangout live stream t-shirt and represent the legacy of the Horror Hangout. Check out the link in the description below this video.